microphone was right there. Sorry. Sorry.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for braving the cold and joining us for our second power lunch. Our sponsor today for both the program and the lunch is the City of Gothenburg, so would you help me thank them for that? So you came today to see Mark Watje. He's new here in town. He's the president of Curbtender. And Curbtender is the new industry that does refuge trucks. They make those out there in the old Baldwin building. If you haven't been out there and you want to see what goes on, give them a call. They might accommodate. They might have some restrictions, but it's a really cool process. We got to go through and see how they weld everything, how they paint in like what feels like the world's largest paint place. And Mark comes here to Gothenburg. He came here in 2019, late in 19, and moved here from Cedar Falls, Iowa. He and his dad run Curbtender. His dad is Kevin Watje. And Mark is a high energy, very intelligent, funny guy who's gonna share his ideas of owning your values. So if you don't mind, help me welcome Mark.
Okay, thanks for having me out and for coming out. I'm always surprised to see people come to hear me talk. I've learned that free food is usually the number one attractant to my speeches. Every time I've had free food involved one way or another. Didn't plan it that way, but if you came here just for the free food, I don't fault you for that. Thanks for coming out anyways, and I hope that you can get something out of this today. So we're going to be talking about owning your value. And when we talk about value, there's kind of two different things I want to separate here, and I don't want to confuse the two. So first off, you have an intrinsic value as a person, and that's not the kind of value we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about your interpersonal value as it relates to the organizations you're involved with, whether that's civic or whether it's your workplace, or even if you have a large enough family, it could be your family. Some of those are complicated, lots of different dynamics, and there's a lot of needs that are pressed upon you as a member of your family. And some of these lessons are directly relatable in that construct as well. So that's kind of the focus here, but I do think it's important to touch on your personal intrinsic value as well, because it does, I think, lead into your interpersonal value to have a better appreciation of your personal value. So let's talk about that quickly. Here's some stats for you to just let you know how much your intrinsic value is worth. There's over 150 what they call fine-tuned cosmic necessities for sustaining life. An example of one of those, and we're about to get real geeky here on science, is this little nugget here. The ratio of gravitational force constant to the electromagnetic force constant, right, still with me, cannot differ from its value by any more than 1 part in 10 to the 40th power, or else it will no longer sustain life. And 10 to the 40th power, if you haven't had algebra in a while, is 1 part in 10,000 trillion, trillion, trillion. That wasn't a typo. There's 3 trillions there. I don't even know what that number looks like, what it means. The point is it's basically infinity, right? So if it deviates just a little bit, life ceases to exist. And that's one example out of 150 or so generally accepted requirements for this universe to sustain life, or to even have one place in this universe to sustain life. So the odds of any planet in the universe even possessing the conditions necessary to sustain life is 10 to the power of 173. So I told you what that 10 to the power of 40 was. I don't even know how to describe 10 to the power of 173. That's insane. It's a massively huge number that loses meaning. It's just infinity. So the fact that you're even here is absolutely stunning. None of us should exist. None of this should exist, and we shouldn't be talking here today. Bump me off. So what's the probability that you should even exist? I didn't run that number. I didn't look for any research studies on that or anything like that. But if you're a subset of how many billions of people, and you've got your unique DNA and your unique you, what's the probability of you, given all those other probabilities of sustaining life and then Earth even having life, right? The point being, you're incredibly precious, everyone. Your value cannot be taken away. You have intrinsic value as a person, and it is extremely rare and profound. Now, here's a more difficult question. Do we live up to that value? And I mean, I don't. I'm not living up to that when I go on a 6-hour binge session on Netflix on a Friday night, and I still do it. So I'm not gonna sit up here and be preachy that, live every second to its fullest and never have any downtime or don't check out. But the reality is that we don't live up to that value, and we can change that. We can be better about that. And that's part of owning your values, understanding the worth of your time, the worth of yourself, the worth of your inputs, and how to direct them, how to improve them. So when we don't live up to our value, there's reasons for this, right? I think the biggest reason is because as humans, we tend to live life reactionary. We have something that happens, an event, it's cold outside, we're putting a coat on. Car breaks down, take it to the savings to get fixed. So we live reactionarily and rather than proactively. And this is just kind of how life is set up. We're used to this rhythm. It's not normal to be overly proactive in our daily lives. So that's what we want to talk about. And as business professionals, some of you are even business owners, but we're used to this process of business planning, and we're used to how to structure proactive strategies. What I want us to do is to learn how to apply those same things just in a different way to our personal lives. It's very directly relatable. And so raise your hand if you've ever built out a business plan before. Okay? And what happens normally after you build that business plan? It might be in a 3-ring binder or something like that. Does it sit on the shelf and get some dust on it? Yeah, but we still do it anyways. And the reason why is because it's the process. That process is very defining for the company, for its culture. And when you do see the business go back to the business plan, what is usually like leading up to that event? Why are they going back to that? Is it a crisis point? They're looking at expansion. They are worried they might go bankrupt. They need to reinvent themselves. Rebranding campaign. We're going to release the new, better us. So we revisit these things when we have these very important moments where we're trying to chart our course as a company. It's the same thing with us as individuals. How many of you have a personal life plan? Raise your hand. All right. Now, keep your hand raised up if it's in writing. Awesome. So that, I think, is a powerful thing to do. And that's what we're doing here. We've got some leave behind toolkit materials, and this is kind of to start you on that path of planning strategically, the way you would your business. So this process that we're going to do for owning your value, for managing your value, is we're going to find our why. Why do we do what we do? What gets us up in the morning? Why we came here? Why did I come here? And I want you guys to think about that later when we get to the end. Why did Mark come here and speak today? Discovering your value. Then from there, we're going to lead into aligning our value systems, because once you know your value, it's important to know how and where to use it. And then lastly, we're going to be talking strategically on how to intentionally manage your value, because it should not be a static thing. So first I'm going to talk about myself, partly because, like anybody who doesn't like to talk about themselves, most of you don't know me, so we'll get the formalities out of the way. Everyone will know Mark by the end of the day, okay? The other thing is that I want you to see a trend. I want you to see a pathway here. When I get to my why, does everything make sense? Does it all connect in some sort of way? Does it seem to be cohesive? I grew up in western Iowa, actually on this same highway and the same railroad tracks, just about 4.5, 5 hours east of here. So it's interesting that life has taken me kind of full circle, and I'm watching the same trains go by again. So rural life, and my wife and I bounce around a lot, and we've enjoyed getting back to a community where you're a known person and you're not going to slip between the cracks. And Gothenburg has really welcomed us, and we love being here. I got my degree from University of Northern Iowa in marketing, and now I'm running a factory. So I always tell people that this doesn't make sense. Remember, I have a marketing degree, and if it works, remember, I have a marketing degree. So I've learned a lot on the job, and the best lessons are the ones you learn the hard way, and only once the hard way. I married Heidi, my high school sweetheart, and my father-in-law had this rule that we could not get married until I was completely done with my education. So he was hoping I would kind of drift off eventually and not be on the scene anymore. So that's why I graduated high school a year early, and then I actually graduated college a year early as well. I had to be united with my sweetie. So my plan worked, was able to speed things up. She's 2 years older than me, that's why I speeded up. And we ended up graduating about the same time from college. Later on, I worked in the evenings and got my MBA from University of Iowa while working at Watje Engineering, which is our predecessor company to Curbtender. Watje Engineering builds garbage trucks, street sweepers, now we call it Curbtender. Started working there in college, and I worked from the ground up. I was doing everything from fulfilling parts orders, moving stuff around on racking, and writing technical manuals, a lot of in the trenches kind of stuff at our family company, and eventually moving up into more marketing approaches and getting into sales. And eventually, I was asked to create a business plan and launch a factory direct dealership in Phoenix, Arizona, which was an incredible experience for a kid who had no experience. So I went down there, and these fine people on the bottom right were the first 7 employees I ever hired in my life. And it was exciting. I was employee number 1, we didn't have a stapler. And we opened up the facility, got staff, got some contracts, got parts moving and service work going, and we broke even. And we even made, a little bit of money the first year. And that was fun. And then after that first year, it wasn't so fun. Now I wasn't building something anymore. I was being asked to maintain something, make sure people treat each other nicely and work well together. I don't like being an HR person. I hire people for that, right, Tracy? So it kind of lost its allure to me, and I thought about leaving the company. I ended up taking a sabbatical and going to work for a company called Western Star, which is part of the Freightliner and Mercedes truck family. And that was a big decision to leave the family company, despite all the great things I was able to do and experience, like moving across the country, traveling to Germany for work, working in Prague for a while. But that was a great experience. Probably the highlight of working at Western Star is I got to see how Fortune 500 companies do things. I got to see the process. I got to see what makes them consistent, what makes them build a legacy brand, what makes them create quality. And that was a really good experience for me. I also got to help lead the launch of 2 brand new products, which in the truck industry is huge. They're not trucks just coming out brand new to market every year. If they have 1 come out in a decade, it's a big deal. And we had 2 coming out within a very short period of time. And I was tasked to lead that launch effort in the Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, New Mexico market. So I had 25 dealers I worked with, and we were consistently in the top 3 out of 10 districts for adoption rates and moving everybody along. So that was a great experience, creating something from nothing, training people, getting that buy-in for people, and I really loved that. And then because I was young, they're like, you know something about tech, so we'll have you implement Salesforce for us across the company. So I was the non-tech part of the tech team that launched Salesforce to 750 users after building out and spending absurd amounts of money custom tailoring it. So that was an awesome experience. But some changes happened. Like all businesses, some political changes happened. My pathway forward got snipped because our general manager and vice president lost their jobs in kind of the management overhaul, and they were my pathway being launched forward. So I started looking outside the company and looking for new opportunity. My father and his business partners heard that I was looking, and they approached me for trying to rejoin the company as president and give me a pathway to buy into the company. So I took them up on that offer. And while I didn't get the pathway to ownership that I was expecting, we did have an opportunity to buy out our old investors, restructure the company, and I led that whole effort. So we went through 7,500 pages of due diligence that I had to pull together and compile over about a 10-month process and broker a sale between two different groups. And it was a huge process. I mean, it almost blew up a million times. You know, there's so many personalities and everybody wants the money. And it was a zoo, but it was really exciting. And I was working, staying up till 2 a.m. every day. You know, you didn't need caffeine, you didn't need coffee because you're just like lit up. So that was a cool experience. And then from there, we got to create something again. Now we're this new company. Now we're Curbtender, you know, and we got to reinvent ourselves and show ourselves to the world. And that was so thrilling to be a part of that and help lead that effort. And of course, to have a chance to buy in the company and be part owner. So that was in 2017, and flash forward to today, we're now here in Gothenburg. And another chance to build something new. Again, I was employee number 1 at our factory out here. We didn't even have a stapler. So came full circle, felt very familiar, but yet at the same time different and very exciting. We now have 25 employees. Here's some shots from inside our factory. There's the big paint booth that Deb was talking about before. And yeah, it's been great. It's gone well, and we've got a great team around us. And probably the biggest lesson I learned from leaving our Arizona operation that I had started is to not discount the value of your contribution. I thought my role had changed 100% to just, you know, the nice police. This guy doesn't get along with the office manager, and the sales guy hates everyone, and you know, all this bickering that I didn't want to deal with. But I thought, well, everybody's equipped to do what they needed to do. They don't need me just to play police. But the reality is when I left and I went to Western Star, they fell upon hard times. They went backwards. There was a lack of leadership. It was a rudderless ship. And one of the first things I had to do when I rejoined the family company was go down there and tell everybody that I had hired how many years prior that we're shutting down the operation and everyone's losing their job. And that was a tough discussion. And it was tough because you're presented with your failure, that you made this decision to leave this group of people that relied upon you, and because, you know, I discounted my value. So that was kind of one of my first big lessons on, one, understanding what your value is that you're bringing to an organization, and two, not discounting it, making sure that you're leaning into it and developing it. So I think the first great starting point is always Simon Sinek's start with why. This is a foundational discussion that he has given through many TED Talks, and it's all out there on the internet if you haven't seen it already. I'm sure most of you, show of hands, have seen it already, probably half. So it's a great piece. He's kind of like the millennial business thought leader, so you know, of course I love him. But people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Martin Luther King didn't have the "I have a plan" speech, he had the "I have a dream" speech. People wouldn't listen, let alone remember a "I have a plan" speech, right? That's not dynamic. And the reason why is because of why. It doesn't tell you why he's doing it, it's just a thing. So what Simon Sinek talks to us about is that for a successful organization, your core strategy is why. And again, as I talked about earlier, we're having this discussion to show you that business strategies can be interlaced right on top of your life as well. You can use them the same way. So for you, what's your why strategy? Why do you get up every morning to do what you do? To make money that in and of itself is not a compelling reason for a business to exist, and I'd argue it's not a compelling reason for you to exist. That shouldn't be your primary motivator in life, and I hope it's not. And I suspect even if you think it is, then it's actually not. You just haven't gone through that path of exploration to understand that really you're after something else beyond that first layer of obviousness of money. Money should be our end result, our reward. It's not a driving motivator that sustains us. Discovering your why is a process, and that is what this worksheet that we have and the rest of the speech today is about, is guiding us along that discovery process. It's not a destination, it's not static, it doesn't end at a certain point. You keep it alive, you keep it moving. So if business can't answer why they do the things that they do, they're likely to flounder and they're likely to fail. And it's the same thing with us in our personal lives. If we don't have a guiding, galvanized reason why we're doing everything, we're likely floundering. We're likely committing ourselves to things that we shouldn't be, or giving ourselves in ways that we shouldn't, because we haven't galvanized that why for ourselves or formalized it. So the tenet of the why is Simon Sinek's golden circle. So quickly, most companies know what they do and can effectively communicate it. Fewer companies know how they do it and can effectively communicate it. And even fewer yet know why they do it and can effectively communicate it. So the whole messaging changes. And his example that I always give is, Apple versus Dell. Dell would just ooze out features, and then Apple's here about changing the world. Apple's here about challenging the status quo. And we happen to make a laptop. Would you like to buy it? That's Simon Sinek's classic line. Putting it into a personal overlay, your why is your cause. It's what you believe in. It's what grounds you and makes you who you are. How, what, is still self-explanatory, but the why is just a little bit of a twist for you personally. So when we're trying to find our why, I've built out this little self-assessment for you to say, what are the things I value? Why do I do the things I do? What do I believe in? And all of your answers for this are here so that way you can assess this canvas and look at it and say, okay, I'm starting to see a pattern here. I'm starting to understand a little bit more about myself. I'm starting to more formalize these thoughts that I already knew inherently, but now we can create something formal out of it. So this leads us to our why statement eventually. So for me, this is my self-assessment. I really believe strongly in truth. Nothing pisses me off more than lies, whether that's to my face, at work, family, or crap you see on TV. That just really bugs me, right? Because if we can't have just one thing be sacred, telling the truth, it's kind of hard to have anything be sacred. I'm a big believer in personal generosity, helping people out on a one-on-one level. I'm a huge fan of new experiences. I love inherently to create. Not necessarily in some sort of craft way, though I built my own pizza oven, and that was somewhat crafty. That was fun. But more so kind of in a structure, in a pathway, in an organizational context I love to create. And I think you've probably seen that with some of the experiences I shared with you. So for me, my why, after canvassing all that, is that I want to create a world around me that's fulfilling, meaningful, and fun. And once you've created an effective why statement, you should be able to reflect back at where you've been, who you are, what you've experienced, and you should see a line twisting through the heart of every major event and decision of your life that connects them together. So whether you're conscious of it or not, you are making decisions like this, but you can own your values so much better if you're aware of it, and you manage it, and you're active with it. That's the whole point. So what's your why? Your evidence should be overwhelmingly present if you have nailed your why statement and you've got it down. You want to make sure that's clear, concise, that you can communicate it. And this isn't necessarily because you're going to go around town and say, like, hey, have I told you my why statement today? It's for you. It's not for other people. It's for you. It's a guidepost. So that leads us to discovering your value. I think that a great starting point is to take the DISC behavioral assessment. It is a phenomenal tool for better understanding yourself, your behaviors, why you do everything. It's a battery of questions, about 140 questions long, and it's grounded in behavioral science. By the time they're done with it, they know you better than you know you. And there's a lot of great summary information that they give you about how you interact with people and why you interact with people that way. But most importantly, when you're done with that, they tell you how to interact with people that are different from you, that you don't inherently understand. Why would they make that decision? Why would they do that? I don't even get them. Well, the reason why you don't get them is because you're a D and they're an S, you know? There's all kinds of different forms of this stuff out there. I personally believe in DISC. It has an incredible amount of science and data behind it. I think the people who actually formed it are the same people that did Match.com, if I'm not mistaken. So they're pretty good at this, you might say. And if you're a chamber member, you happen to get 4 of these free for your organization. So you've got this tool available to you, and I highly encourage you to use it. This is a great way to start learning how you use your value with other people. Because if you don't know how to deliver your message or your value in these different settings, then it gets wasted. And that's part of being strategic about your value and how you manage it and how you own it. Anyone taking this in here? Quite a few people, that's great. Love it. And you'll find, by the way, it will change. If you're going through a different situation in your life, where you're answering it primarily coming from a standpoint where personal setting versus professional or new professional setting, you will change. I've changed from a high D and high I to kind of a still high D and a high C. So if you know me personally, you're probably not surprised by the high D. And I apologize to you. It's important to know that what you're good at, when you're identifying and finding your value, what you're good at is not necessarily what people value you for. Remember, interpersonal value. This is what people are receiving from you that they treasure, that they value, that think is great. So you may be good at something. That doesn't mean anyone wants you to do it, or that they particularly want you to do it versus somebody else. It's going to be different depending on who we talk to. It's going to change in setting, whether it's professional, civic, at church. But what you want to do is ask. It's important to take this process to have kind of this dialogue. It's not often in your life that you get to have this kind of honest dialogue with anybody. Ask them, why do you value me? And then chart that all down. And I would suggest just send it out there in an email. Don't ask them one-on-one. Don't let them see your feedback. Don't let them see you smirk or question or whatever. Just send it out there and let them send it back. And what you're going to find is that you're going to have some commonalities. So here I find that all 4 people I asked, I had my mother, my wife, my sister, and my HR administrator. All 4 people had pays attention to details. Interesting. All 4 people had strategic planning, right? So now you're starting to understand, hey, this is something that everybody universally, whether I'm in a work setting, home setting, church setting, people are universally valuing this about me. That means they want more of it for me, right? That's what you want to double down on. That's what you want to lean into. That is your core competency, right? So now if you can take that core competency and you can double down on it by either attaching on other attributes of yourself, talents, capabilities, or giving more time towards that thing, that's how you are owning your value. You're understanding what you provide out here that people want more of, and you're figuring out a way to give them more of it. But here's the problem. People are going to pull from you every which way, and there's a million different directions you can go, but you need to say no. You need to say no to good things, bad things, of course, but good things, so you can say yes to the right things. Because just because something's a good thing does not mean you should do it. Does not mean you should be part of that group, go do this or that, or sign up for that, okay? That's a hard thing to learn. This is something that my mother, that quote, she teaches to every one of her entrepreneurial students. She runs a student business incubator. She says, when you're starting out, you have to form who you are, because everyone's going to want you to say, do something else. Oh, do you do this by chance, or can you do it? And your natural reaction as an entrepreneur who wants to make money and is struggling to make rent right now is, oh yeah, we can do that. We can do that. And eventually, you become this formless, shapeless entity that doesn't quite have a definition, right? It's the same thing in your personal lives. You can't do everything for everyone. So now that we have discovered why, we've created our value statement and understand our value, we need to align it. And when we talk about alignment, it's all about understanding where you engage your value at. So this is how you own it, is if you are going to be in a work setting or a church setting or family setting, is that the best place for your value? Is that the best place for you? Are you engaging them properly? So you need to be strategic about who you share that value with, or what you share it with, and why. I promise you that the best leading indicator of stress and turmoil in your life is whether or not you are engaged in a professional or personal level in a setting where you have misaligned culture and values, principles. You don't see eye to eye, right? That's where you're going to get the friction points, especially on a company level, but also like at church level, right? There's a lot of friction in churches. Well, why? I don't believe we should be doing that, right? This is exactly at the heart of what that is. All right, so then you have to ask yourself, is that the church that should change, or is that you should change and find a different church? Own your value, figure it out, right? So you want to assess the organization, whether it's a church, whether it's your employer. Who are they, and is this something I want to be a part of? So the first thing you want to do is look at their values. What are their mission statements? What are their statement of beliefs? What are their goals? The vision of the company, where are they going? And does that line up with what I want? Now that I know my values, now that I know my why statement, do we have an alignment here? Are we actually going the same direction? Am I going to be supporting them and on their goals and missions? Are they going to be supporting me on mine? Right? Then you fact check that against their norms, which is what's actually happening every day on the ground. Are these people who they say they are? Right? Do the line level employees at this company hate their job, hate their bosses, say the whole place is a joke, et cetera, or do they have a passion for it? Do they love it? Anybody like Chick-fil-A here? Is there any doubt that Chick-fil-A is masters at finding that alignment between their employees and the company vision and goals? And they are happy, they're having fun, they encourage us, and they just seek them out. Simon Sinek calls this the red hat thing, right? You find other people with red hats. You figure out how to articulate who your people are, but it's hard for you to understand who that is on the employer or organizational level if you don't know what kind of hat you're wearing. So that's the whole reason why we're doing this. So do they believe what they say they believe, and do you subscribe to what that is? So the Jay Wilkinson, who is the president of Firespring, I have no idea if he still is, but he had a great TED Talk out of Lincoln, and he created this concept of this employee matrix. He said all employees fit into one of these four quadrants. All right, so yeah, two sides of this. What's missing here? Oh yeah, do they adopt our culture or not? So if you're a high performer and you adopt the company's values and culture, you're a rock star. This is the person that every company wants, and they're the ones who change the future of that company. They're the rock stars. Low performers that still embrace the values and the culture, they're still great employees. We like them, we need them. We need people who come in, clock out, so long as they believe in what we're doing. The bottom left, we don't know how the heck they even got into our door, so we need to fix that. And top left, this is where they really struggle. This is where employers struggle with, is high-performing employees that don't embrace the values and don't agree with the company's vision. So I would flip this on the other side and say, where do you fit in this with your company or your organization or your civic group that you're a part of? They're probably asking the same thing, but you should own that. Be active on it. Don't be reactive on it. Because if there is a misalignment, you shouldn't move. Those high performance employees who don't embrace values, that is a guaranteed friction point. There's going to be problems there all day, every day. Company doesn't feel like they can make a move, and the employee thinks company can't move on from me, right? That's a bad relationship right there. So ask yourself, when you're aligning your value systems with an organization, do I agree with their values? Do I subscribe to their vision? Is this somewhere that they value me? And do they say that? Do they show that? Do I value them? Where do they put me on their matrix? And where would I put them on my matrix? And then, is it appreciated? Of course. There's a Dell update too. So don't forget the Dell update, guys. Lastly, we take all this information to manage the value. We have in the business literature a concept for how we manage human capital, and that is to do activities for attracting, developing, and retaining. I'm translating those to our setting here and saying that I think a rough translation would be engaging, growing, and maintaining. So when we are trying to actively manage our value, these are the three categories we should be talking about and looking at. With engage, how do I use my values at this place? Am I directing my time, energy, and efforts properly? Is it making an impact? Or am I spinning my wheels and going in the wrong direction? With growth, what do I need to learn? Because again, your value is not a static thing. Whatever that common thread is that people in your life subscribe to and say, yes, Tracy is X, Y, and Z, and that's why I value her and love her, right? What do you do to make those better? How can you learn and grow and make those things stronger or broader or more refined? And most importantly, what are the activities that you need to do to develop that? And then maintain, the number one thing there is, it's hard for you to maintain your value if you are running off the tracks. Stress. How do you deal with stress? For me, I shut my phone off at 6 o'clock every night. I have a separate phone for personal, and I don't turn that work phone on until 7:30 the next morning. Sorry. I used to keep that phone on, and I would not put it down, put it on silent or anything like that until I answered every single email and text message that came in. That meant sometimes at night, I'd be doing stuff till 1:30 in the morning. You can't live that way. You are not that important to the whole world's success that you need to do that. You're not the president. And even them, hey, we know Joe's taking a nap, okay? So if you can take a nap, so can you, all right? So figure out a way to manage your stress. Figure out how to manage your work-life balance. This is a really important topic about finding that balance of how much energy you devote to one aspect over the other. And then figure out ways and activities to keep your value sharp. Lastly, I'll leave you with a way of creating good strategies. This is a framework that I developed for an entrepreneurial business strategy class I taught at Northern Iowa, with a slight twist for our audience here. But you need a strategy that supports the 3 S's. The first is it supports your why statement. So it's in line and consistent with your why statement. Next thing you want to check it against is it sustainable? Can I keep this up? What kind of energy and effort does it require? What kind of resources does it require? How sustainable is the strategy? Kind of like, your New Year's resolution, every year you're like, I'm gonna lose a lot of weight. And you're like, okay, but what was your strategy to sustain that? Well, yeah, that was mine too. I'm still eating runs. Okay, then the last one is, no offense to runs, it's very healthy, it's delicious. Last thing is it satisfies your stakeholders. So the stakeholders in your life, it's your family, it's your boss, it's your coworkers, it's your employees, it's everybody that is going to be impacted by your strategy and your decisions. So if you can find a strategy that checks off all 3 of these needs, it's a very robust, strong strategy. The only difference, if you want to use this in your professional setting, is rather than support your why statement, does it support company vision and mission? Okay, great framework for you to use with your managers and your leadership teams. So here's your toolkit. Go out and watch Simon Sinek's Start With Why if you haven't already seen it. Do the long version, it's about an hour and some change. Not the short version, that's like 12 minutes. Take your DISC behavioral profile Ask friends and family to give you feedback on what they value about you and chart that out and try to find some common themes. And then create tactical strategies that are going to help you to engage, grow, and maintain your value. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Mark, so much. We appreciate you being here and presenting this very motivational, informational presentation. I do want to know, are there any questions from the group out there that you'd like to shout out? And I will repeat it on the microphone so that they can hear it on the Zoom call. Don't be shy. Anyone? Okay, so I think that this is a great opportunity for us at the beginning of the year to take some of these tips and strategies and go out from here, something that we can put into practice right away, thinking about what's our why, figuring out what is our value, what is it that we do in our workplaces and how they align with the positions that we have. So great tips for today. I encourage you to stick around and talk to Mark individually afterwards if you have a chance. And we appreciate you coming again. Thank you to our sponsors, the City of Gothenburg, and also thank you to the Hogs Group who provided the lunch. We appreciate that. Don't forget to come back in March. March 10th, we have a great virtual speaker who's going to be talking C-Rock. You won't want to miss it. And I hope that you'll also invite some of your friends. Go out and tell some of your colleagues and neighbors and family members about what a great opportunity the Power Lunch is. So let's give Mark a great round of applause for his time and his talk.